स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मामृतङ्गमय। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। Let us bow down to Sri Ramakrishna, the embodiment of all religions, the Supreme God incarnate. Let us pray to Him to lead us from unreal to the real, to lead us from the darkness of ignorance to the light of knowledge, to lead us from death to immortality. Sri Ramakrishna has given spiritual instructions to be followed. If we practice them regularly, our prayer will be fulfilled. So what is needed here is practice. Practice is very important. In the last class, I have dealt with how one should establish oneself in inner solitude. That is important step which leads you to the next stage of renunciation. Sri Ramakrishna has said, discrimination and renunciation are the purifying agents. We have already dealt with the subject discrimination. Now we are dealing with the subject renunciation. Both are equally important in order to purify the muddy waters. Then only you will get success in religion. How much you practice, to that extent you realize the value of religion. It is not in mere talking, it is not in mere theorizing, it is just in practice and practice alone. So, from this point of view, renunciation is the real beginning of religion. Swami Chidananda says in one of his complete works, tremendous purity, that tremendous renunciation is the one secret of spirituality. There's a famous Upanishadic statement which also tells very clearly about this. Na karmana na prajaya dhane na tyage naike amritatvama nashu. Immortality is attained neither through wealth, nor through progeny, nor through materialistic activities, but through renunciation alone immortality is achieved. Tyage naike amrtatvamanashu. So it has got supreme importance in religion, in spiritual life. Renunciation plays a very important role. Sell all that thou hast and give to the poor and follow me, says Lord Christ. All great saints, all prophets have expressed it and have carried it out in their own lives. How can great spirituality come without that renunciation? Renunciation is the background of all religious thoughts, wherever it be. And you will always find that as the idea of renunciation lessens, the more will the senses creep into the field of religion, and spirituality will decrease in the same ratio. The quality of spirituality depends upon the quality of your renunciation. What does renunciation mean? If you understand by it merely giving up, renunciation would become only a negative virtue. It has a positive content as well. Renunciation doesn't mean just giving up. It means giving up the lower for the sake of the higher. You give up the unreal for the sake of the real. You give up the impermanent for the sake of the eternal. In short, you give up the world for the sake of God. After describing what true renunciation means, Sri Ramakrishna asked a devotee in order to test him, "Now tell me, what's the meaning of renunciation?" The devotee was very attentive. He heard all that was said by Sri Ramakrishna. He replied, "Renunciation doesn't mean simply dispassion for the world. It means dispassion for the world and also longing for God." That is renunciation. Hearing this, Sri Ramakrishna was pleased. He was pleased to know that the devotee has assimilated his instruction. Moreover, true dispassion for the world cannot come without a genuine longing for God. The two are inseparably interconnected. True renunciation is always a spontaneous phenomenon. It cannot be achieved by labored efforts. You don't really renounce things yourself. Things drop away from you on their own. When and how does this happen? To know this, you must remember that you are attached to only that which holds some meaning for you. When things lose their meaning and values, when they become irrelevant and useless to you, you automatically become detached from them. So long as you relish and thrive on worldly puppets and sensual supports, you can't detach yourself from them. So, the beginning of the realization of your aloneness, which I talked in my last class, provides the first spark to ignite the spirit of detachment in you. You intuitively realize that there is a life higher than the type you have been leading so far. When the awareness of the possibility of a higher life dawns on you, detachment becomes easier, almost spontaneous. In fact, the two, realization of your aloneness and detachment from the world, then onwards proceed simultaneously, each strengthening the other. The more you feel the inner solitude, the more detached you become. And the more detached you become, the more you feel the inner solitude. And as a result of this mutual reinforcement, the awareness of the higher life becomes stronger and stronger. Renunciation is basically an internal process. Inwardly, a revolution takes place in your attitudes and responses. But outwardly, no one may even notice it. You continue with your duties, with your responsibilities and obligations as before. But your approach to life has changed. That's the important point. So it is called antar-sannyasa. Antar-sannyasa. That is internal renunciation. In some cases, this internal renunciation is followed by external renunciation as well. Just as the monks wear the ochre robe and practice renunciation not only internally but also externally. Thus we have two types of renunciation: inner renunciation and inner plus outer renunciation. Both, one a householder and the other a monk, belong to the same class. One may be a householder living in the world amidst the family, but internally he may have tremendous renunciation. Sri Ramakrishna refers to such spiritual aspirant as Jnani. Both of them are Jnanis. They have the same experience. It's clear that what matters is inner renunciation. That's what Sri Ramakrishna emphasized always. Without developing and establishing yourself firmly on renunciation, you will not be able to come closer to God. So, mental renunciation is the essential thing. That too makes one a sannyasin. But one must set fire to one's desires. Then alone can one succeed. Sri Ramakrishna says this in the Gospel. So he has got specific name for those who renounce only internally. He calls them hidden yogis. They are not showing up anything outside. Hidden yogis. And those with both inner and outer renunciation, Sri Ramakrishna calls them as revealed yogis. Hidden yogis, revealed yogis. Now, Sri Ramakrishna instructs specifically how to achieve perfection in inner renunciation. How to make yourself firmly rooted in internal renunciation. Sri Ramakrishna gives clear instructions in order to get perfection in the internal renunciation. He says, do all your duties, but keep your mind on God. Your spirituality begins with the faith in God. Without faith in God, without believing the existence of God, there is no spirituality. Forget about it. Spirituality is possible only with the firm faith that there is that divine power. There is that divine spirit, all loving, all pervading, the embodiment of compassion and mercy. That tremendous faith in the presence of God is very important to establish yourself in spiritual life. So Sri Ramakrishna tells, do whatever you are doing. You are not to bother about them. Only thing is, you must keep your mind in God. Live with all, family, wife, children, father, mother. Serve them. Treat them as if they were very dear to you. But know in your heart of hearts that they don't belong to you. You are in association with them. You treat them well, serve them well, because of your association with them. But in the heart of hearts, you must remember that you belong to the Supreme God. Again he tells, there is a maid servant in the house of a rich man. She performs all the household duties. She does her job very well. All the people in the home like her very much. But her thoughts are fixed on her own home in her native village. But when she works in the master's home, she works wholeheartedly. She brings up her master's children as if they were her own. She even speaks of them as my Rama, my Hari. Rama and Hari are the children of the rich man. She even calls them, you are my own, like that. She fondles the children. She loves them very closely. But in her own mind, she knows very well that they don't belong to her at all. Then he said, the tortoise moves about in the water, but can you guess where her thoughts are? They are on the bank, where her eggs are laying. Do all your duties in the world, but keep your mind on God. First rub your hands with oil and then break open the jackfruit. It's a special type of fruit which has a lot of milk, sticky milk inside. If you don't smear your hand with oil, then it's too difficult to open the fruit at all. First secure the oil of divine love, and then set your hands to the duties of the world. Together with this, you must practice discrimination. Objects of lust and greed are impermanent. God is the only eternal substance. What does a person get with money? Analyze it. The answer is food, clothes, and a dwelling place. Nothing more. You can't realize God with its help. Therefore, money can never be the goal of life. Like that, you must initiate discrimination in your thinking. So when you practice, follow these instructions very carefully, then you will be able to achieve perfection in internal renunciation. The more you are well established in the internal renunciation, the more you are close to God, very close. You want nothing but God. That's what Sri Ramakrishna meant when he said discrimination and renunciation are the purifying agents. Let us try to follow these instructions. Then you will see how wonderful results you get in your life. Practice is important. Practice, practice, practice. Consciously practicing. not doing unconsciously. Not that you are meditating in your dream. It makes no sense. Do it consciously. Consciously try to overpower anger. Consciously try to get rid of jealousy, hatred, and all these terrible bad qualities which simply destroy your personality totally. So practice, unless you practice to eradicate these impurities, how can you expect God vision? How can you even ask that question? People simply keep on asking. Oh, I did meditation, nothing happened. Nothing will happen, I also tell. Nothing will happen. Go and hug the world. Nothing will happen. If you want result, be very strict about practice. Very strict about practice. No compromise. Then you will see how you will shine gloriously in this spiritual life. With these words I conclude my comments. Now I read some passage and then all of you can ask questions. Chapter 27, we are starting. At Dakshineshwar, it was about 11 o'clock. The master was sitting in his room at Dakshineshwar. He had not yet taken his midday meal. Arrangements had been made with the musician Shyamdas to entertain the master and the devotees with his kirtan. Baburam, M. Manamohan, Bhavanath, Kishori, Chunilal, Haripad, the Mukherjee brothers, Ram, Surendra, Tarak, Niranjan, and others arrived at the temple garden. Lathu, Harish, and Hazra were staying with the master. When M saluted Sri Ramakrishna, the master asked, "Where is Narendra? Is he not coming?" M told him that Narendra could not come. A Brahmin devotee was reading to the master from a book of devotional songs by Ram Prasad. Sri Ramakrishna asked him to continue. The Brahmin read a song, the first line of which was, "O mother, put on thy clothes." Master said, "Stop, please. These ideas are outlandish and bizarre. Read something that will awaken bhakti." The Brahmin read, "Who is there that can understand what Mother Kali is? Even the 6 darshanas are powerless to reveal her." Master said to M, "I got a pain because I lay too long on one side while in samadhi yesterday at other's house. So now I will take Baburam with me when I visit the houses of the devotees. He is a sympathetic soul." With these words the master sang, "How shall I open my heart, O friend? It is forbidden me to speak. I am about to die for lack of a kindred soul to understand my misery. Simply by looking in his eyes, I find the beloved of my heart. But rare is such a soul who swims in ecstatic bliss on the high tide of heavenly love." Master said, the bowls sing songs like that. They also sing another kind of song. "Stay your steps, O wandering monk. Stand there with begging bowl in hand and let me behold your radiant face. According to the Shakti cult, the Siddha is called a Kaul, and according to the Vedanta, a Paramahamsa. The Bauls call him a Sai. They say no one is greater than a Sai. The Sai is a man of supreme perfection. He doesn't see any difference in the world. He wears a necklace, one half made of cow bones and the other of the sacred Tulsi plant. He calls the ultimate truth Alek, the incomprehensible one. The Vedas call it Brahman. About the Jivas, the Bauls say they come from Alek and they go into Alek. That's to say, the individual soul has come from the unmanifest and goes back to the unmanifest. The Bauls will ask you, do you know about the wind? The wind means the great current that one feels in the subtle nerves, Ida, Pingala and Sushumna. When the Kundalini is awakened, they will ask you further, in which station are you dwelling? According to them, there are 6 stations corresponding to the 6 psychic centers of yoga. If they say that a man dwells in the 5th station, it means that his mind has climbed to the 5th center, known as the Vishuddha Chakra. To Yam he said, at that time he sees the formless. Saying this, the master sang, within the petals of this flower, there lies concealed a subtle space, transcending which one sees at length the universe in space dissolve. Once a bowl came here. I asked him, have you finished the task of refining the syrup? Have you taken the pot off the stove? The more you boil the juice of sugar cane, the more it is refined. In the first stage of boiling, it is simply the juice of the sugar cane. Next it is molasses, then sugar candy, and so on. As it goes on boiling, the substances you get are more and more refined. When does a man take the pot off the stove? That is, when does a man come to the end of his sadhana? That is practice. He comes to the end when he has acquired complete mastery over his sense organs. His sense organs become loosened and powerless as a leech is loosened from the body when you put lime on its mouth. In that state, a man may live with a woman, but he doesn't feel any lust for her. Many of the Bauls follow a dirty method of spiritual discipline. It is like entering a house through the back door by which the scavengers come. One day I was taking my meal when a Baul devotee arrived. He asked me, are you yourself eating or are you feeding someone else? The meaning of his words was that the Siddha sees God dwelling within a man. The Siddhas among the Bauls will not talk to persons of another sect. They call them strangers. The Bauls designate the state of perfection as the sahaja, the natural state. There are 2 signs of this state. First, a perfect man will not smell of Krishna. Second, he is like the bee that lights on the lotus but doesn't sip the honey. The first means that he keeps all his spiritual feelings within himself. He doesn't show outwardly any sign of spirituality. He doesn't even utter the name of Hari. The second means that he is not attached to woman. He has completely mastered his senses. The Bauls do not like the worship of an image. They want a living man. That's why one of their sects is called the Karta Bhaja. They worship the Karta, that is to say, the Guru as God. You see how many opinions there are about God. Each opinion is a path. There are innumerable opinions and innumerable paths leading to God. We'll stop here. So, the result depends upon your practice. That's what is meant when Sri Ramakrishna said spiritual practice. By doing spiritual practice, you are purifying yourself thoroughly. And you get the final result. The more you come towards God, the more you become peaceful and tranquil. You'll be well established in equanimity. So, perfect peacefulness is the indication of your spiritual advancement. Spiritual advancement is indicated by your peacefulness, how far you are peaceful. So, all of you have to practice renunciation in some way or other. Sri Ramakrishna himself has suggested practice antarsanyas, internal renunciation. That means you must give the undivided attention to God. That's the meaning of renunciation. Undivided attention. Yes, Anindya, any comment? Scientific comments?
Ramji, when you say the peacefulness of mind, do you mean the controlling of the mind?
Peacefulness of the mind means disturbance of the mind are not bothering you. That means you don't have any more disturbances in the mind. You're not affected by the disturbances anymore. That means you will not lose your mental balance. You're not pulled down by the reactions of the world. You feel that you are disconnected with all these worldly things. So that makes you completely free from all frictions. That's the meaning of peacefulness. And peacefulness also means you are able to dwell calmly, cheerfully, lovingly on God. You feel joyful to be with God. You feel joyful to remember His name. So, you feel joyful to be with Him. You are so full, you don't bother about anything else. That's the state of equilibrium. Do you want any question? Yeah.
He asked about control, and as I understand it, it's about surrender. If you surrender to spirit, you are able to move beyond this plane.
Controlling is different, surrendering is different.
Controlling is ego-driven.
Uh-huh.
if we talk about spirit, we're talking about death of ego. Therefore, death of the need to control.
See, everything...
We are spiritual beings. We spend lifetimes trying to become aware of that.
Yeah.
But we believe that we are one with God whether we know it or not.
That is true. That is a fact.
Anyhow, so
but to realize that you are one with God is the thing that is needed now. How to realize that? That's the truth. You are part and parcel of God. There's no doubt about it. Because you have forgotten that state, you are in trouble. You are suffering all the time because you have separated yourself from God and you feel you are different. God is different. So all the suffering is because of that. You are more sensitive about your own individual ego that hurts you every now and then. All small pricks will create commotion in yourself because of the ego. Unless you are aware of the mischief played by the ego, how can you make any advancement in spirituality? So, herein comes the attitude of surrendering. Surrender to God. Pray to Him. Oh Lord, I am helpless. I am unable to do anything myself. You should intervene and see how I come to you. How I come to you. If you pray wholeheartedly this way and live your life accordingly, even though you have to pass through some difficulties, still, if you persist on living higher life, then certainly you will succeed. Life is an opportunity given to you to make an effort. To make an effort. It is true, this one life may not be enough at all to fight with all the enemies who have lodged in your mind. It is not a small matter. And this one short life is nothing, actually. Half the life is already gone. Boyhood is gone. Youthful stage is gone. Now you are in the twilight of your life. Now you are planning to have spirituality. So you can imagine how short life you have got. In the short time you want to achieve the maximum result. Of course it is possible if you are really very strong and determined. You are not concerned about the time, etc. Well, what is that? I am ready. Once you are in the track, it's all right. Once you sit in the boat will carry you across the ocean, across the river. Sitting in the boat is important. So, starting your spiritual life is like sitting in the boat. Then either this life or next life or third life, or you are not to bother about that. You are sitting in the boat is continuing the journey. You are onward. That way you have to train yourself. But training is important. Training is important. Always you must be aware of what you are doing. Always you must be aware of what you are doing, what you are thinking. So you must have definite method to practice, not hodgepodge. There should not be any confusion in your spiritual practices. It should be thoroughly fixed and the direction must be properly given to the mind. Then everything will go smoothly. Yeah. Anything else? Any questions, Sainath? Mr. Buchanan, do you have any? You don't think? Barbara? Spiritual track. So you must always try to develop that love of God. That's very important. All the activities which you are doing, the attitude is how you could develop your love of God. If that is there, everything becomes holy. Everything becomes holy. Everything is so joyful. But as I said, as Sri Ramakrishna said, you must always apply discrimination and renunciation to fight the enemies, the dreadful enemies, jealousy, hatred, and so on. Yeah.
You want to make a comment?
Mm-hmm.
At the Olima retreat in California, one layman asked the question, we are householders, how can we practice discrimination, renunciation? This question came up in the public meeting at Olima retreat, and one of from the audience said, Ramakrishna never asked Girish Ghosh to stop drinking. He said, before you drink, offer to mother. And similarly with Suresh, whenever he went to a house of ill fame, Suresh, why don't you take mother with you? She'll protect you from all harm. So the advice that emerged from that one was, though we may be engaged in worldly life, whatever we enjoy, if we think, oh, it's coming from mother, as an initial step, then the thought of mother will take away from the thought of the world. That was the thing that came up. It appealed to me, that's why I'm reminding myself and you all.
The point here to be very careful in understanding these statements of Sri Ramakrishna. You must know it depends upon the individual cases. He is not encouraging, and you don't think he has allowed us to drink and to live in whatever way we want. If you live in whatever way you want, you can't think of God. Because the idea of God itself, you won't relish it. As long as your mind is dwelling on the worldly things and worldly pleasures, you cannot relish the thought of God. But what Sri Ramakrishna is telling there is, because he had become so addicted to drinking, Sri Ramakrishna knew very well that it can't be stopped all of a sudden. So, it has to be done in a gradual way. So, he had to be trained in a gradual way. In order to give him hope, he said, all right, all along you were drinking, but now, when you drink, before you drink, think of God. That means, previously, whole mind was on the bottle. How many bottles I could drink? But now at least part of the mind is going to God now. Because Sri Ramakrishna said, think of God and drink. To that extent, that part of the mind is going to God. Slowly, he was raised up, and finally he could be free from all those cravings. That's the important point. That's what when Sri Ramakrishna said, do all your duties but keep your mind on God. Keeping the mind on God, then you do, then it doesn't harm you. Keeping the mind on God means you must love God. That means you must follow all the values, ethical, moral and spiritual values in life. Then, whatever you do, it's all joyful. They won't bother you. Otherwise, it's not easy. It's not easy. So, that's why Sri Ramakrishna tells, what is it that Why the man is suffering? It is because he is too much attached to lust and gold. And in another place, Sri Ramakrishna says, one more he adds, lust, gold and land, property. These three constitute the world. The whole mind is sitting on either on one of them, or two of them, or on all of them. Mind is sitting all the time. Either lust or money or property. This way, that way, this way, that way, it is going, swinging. So, that's why Sri Ramakrishna tells, this kind of swinging will not help you. You have to cut off your connection with these three. Lust, wealth and land. Don't aspire for them. Aspire for the real substance. Aspire for God. That's the meaning. So, and Girish Chandra Ghosh, his whole life was transformed. Because he came to Sri Ramakrishna. Then he developed such tremendous faith in him. His faith became so strong that purified his heart thoroughly. So, you have to understand all these points. That shows anybody can come to God. Even a worst person who has committed worst crime is also taken up by God. If once he comes to God, God knows how to purify him. Api chesu duracharo bhajate mamananya bhak sadhureva mantavya. Lord Krishna says in the Gita, once he comes to God, he is saved. There's a famous story in Buddha's life. There was a great dacoit who was a terror to the whole town. His name was Angulimala. A great terror. People would run. He would torture the people. He would plunder them. Did all sorts of things. Buddha came to know about it. Then he said to his disciples, well, today don't follow me. He told his disciples, now I want to go alone. I want to meet that fellow. I want to see him. People were terribly afraid to look at him. But here Buddha is telling, I am going to see him. He went. Angulimala, he came to know that Buddha was coming and he became furious. And how dare he comes near me? I will kill him. He shouted, stop there. Don't step further. Like that Anguli ordered him. Buddha smiled at him, smiled. The more he shouted, the more Buddha gives a gentle smile. And he came close to him. Came very close. Courageously, without any trace of fear. Then he told him, my child, what are you doing? Why all these things you are doing? Why are you indulging in such violence? When Buddha came very close to him, Angulimala looked at him. He saw. Seeing Buddha's face, he was transformed. Seeing that wonderful peacefulness in that personality, he was totally transformed. Immediately he caught hold of his feet. Sir, from now onwards, I will be your disciple. Please accept me. The worst man, committed all killings, so many things he did. Buddha accepted him. Come on. Don't worry about what you have done before. From now onwards you live like this. He gave instructions how he should conduct himself. From now onwards, he literally followed that way, strictly followed. Then one of the conditions was, Buddha said, now you go for begging the food. Go to the homes and ask for the food. It is one of the spiritual practice. And Angulimala is going. People are running. The thief is coming. But he is not doing any harm. He is not showing any reaction. He is just repeating God's name and so on. And in the beginning they were afraid. Then they came to know this fellow, something has happened to him. Then do you know what the people did? The urchins and the other people. They began to throw stones at him, stones. Whole body was bruised. Blood was oozing throughout his body. It was flowing. And he came to Buddha and said, "Oh Lord, see my condition. All are pelting stone at me." Buddha said, "Bear with that, bear with them. Don't react. How much you have tortured all of them. Just keep quiet. Everything will be all right." That assurance was enough for him. And he became afterwards a very great disciple. So once you come to God, your life is changed totally. But coming to God is important. How much you are sincere in coming to God. That's important. With these words I conclude. Thank you.